sit on the thing there.
I'm going to see how the wheels turn.
How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
All right, Dominic.
How you doing, sir?
Yes, sir. How are you? All right.
Oh, it's good.
You doing all right?
Yeah.
Just stand up there and start talking.
Video is good, but they said it can't hear. Is that a function of us not speaking in the mic? So
No, I have it up. I adjust it in real time. So I can look at the monitor and I can see sometimes louder than others. So I'm trying to, sometimes unfortunately it's too loud. And I try and turn it down. And then we're gonna lose some lower end stuff. But I try to find the sweet spot for this one. Not too loud.
George will hit you with a left cross.
Yes. This is what happens when you're going on the skateboard really fast. You come to a sudden stop.
You okay?
I'm all right.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. Yeah. When you get to my age, not so much, because I'm not getting my butt on this.
Oh.
City Council. Chairman, Mr. Bird, Mr. Washington, how you, sir? Mr. Bird. Tearing it up. Yes, sir. No, I didn't cop my foot on that. My leg up.
All right, here's what it says. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll talk to you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Clock says 6:05, 6:06 p.m. So I'd like to call the regular meeting of Sumter County Council for Tuesday, February 23rd to order. Ms. B, would you please give us an invitation? Let us all stand and remain standing for the pledge.
Let us pray. Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we do acknowledge you as the one in whom we live and move and have our being. We thank you for allowing us to come to the table again to serve you as we serve the people. And we ask that you be a part of our meeting this evening and help us to go through all the agenda items. We especially ask that you be with those who have lost loved ones. If you would just soothe their broken hearts and lift their fallen spirits. Help them to know that death is not the end and that there are promises for greater and better ways and things. As we go through this meeting, we ask that you help us to make the decisions that are pleasing in your sight. We ask that you continue to bless our men and women who are serving in our armed forces. And we just ask that you continue to bless the people in Texas and all those other states where they are suffering from the cold. And we just thank you for this beautiful day that it has warmed up. Continue to wrap your arms around them and help them to heal. These are all blessings we thank and ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Landon, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
And I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. All opposed? Have a motion to approve the minutes from our regular meeting for February the 9th. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve our minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, the minutes are all in favor? The minutes are approved. There are no land use matters, but before we get started, may I please remind council for two reasons. Please speak into the mic so Ms. Landry can pick it up when it comes time for her to do the minutes. But also I'm hearing from the public that who are looking at us via Zoom or however means that Mr. Perry is putting it out there, that the video quality is good, but they can't hear us. So please speak into the mic.
My dear friend, Naomi Sanders, who passed this past year, I know you were thinking about it. I might have jumped ship on you on that.
You always do.
So I'm sorry about it, but I think we should just appreciate her. I enjoyed her being here, and she was a wonderful woman.
Since you've already brought it up, can we please establish a moment of silence for our former chairwoman, Ms. Naomi Sanders. Thank you. Okay, ordinance number 21-945, Mr. Bryan.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to have a public hearing on this before you have second reading. And for the benefit of the members of the public, this all started because the General Assembly passed what's been called the South Carolina Business License Tax Standardization Act. And that was passed on September 30th of 2020. And the purpose is to establish a standardized business tax across the state, because there are 46 different ways of doing things. The section B1 of that says, business license must be issued to a taxpayer for a 12-month period beginning May the 1st and ending April 30th. Well, our current business license ordinance has it on March 15th. And so what we're going to do with this ordinance is shift the starting and the ending dates from March 15th to May the 1st. That's the purpose of this ordinance. Go ahead and take any questions before public hearing.
Any questions, Mr. Brown? Prior to second reading, we'll have a public hearing, and I declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please proceed to the microphone. Seeing none, public hearing is closed. What's the pleasure of council?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Bateman and seconded by Mr. Baker that we approve second reading. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Second reading for ordinance 21-945, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 21-945 is approved. 21-947. Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, again, before you have second reading on this ordinance, you'll have a public hearing. And for the benefit of the public, this is an ordinance to place on some property that the county acquired some years ago. We call it the Lewis Lawrence Tract, now it's to be called the Pocatello East Industrial Park. Anyway, the previous covenants are attached. And when I introduced this 2 weeks ago, I explained that this has been worked out through consultation with Mr. Nixon, Jay Schwaber, and also Helen Rudman at the planning department. And the idea is to put covenants on there to make it homogeneous so it'll be attractive to industries who will try to lure Sumter and enhance economic development. Be glad to take any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Bryant? Now I declare public hearing for ordinance 21-947 to be open. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please proceed to the podium. Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Move approval. Second. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve 21-947. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, ordinance 21-947 is approved. The next item on the agenda is the presentation of external audit for Sumter County's fiscal year 2020.
Mr. Chair, council members, good evening. We have with us tonight Ms. Charlotte Allen with Webster Rogers. Webster Rogers has performed the county's annual audit, and she's here to present that information for council and the public this evening.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. I'd like to express Webster Rogers' appreciation for the opportunity to do business and be the external auditors for the county. This is a formal presentation of the audit. We have discussed it in some length with the Finance Committee and your management. So we're just here to give you the overview. The responsibility for the financial statements rests with the county. They're responsible for the preparation and fair presentation. Our responsibility as auditors is to render an opinion as to whether those financial statements are accurately or fairly stated in all material respects. There are a number of opinion units: governmental activities, business type activities, discretely presented component unit, which is the library, the general fund, the capital penny sales tax 2, debt service funds, other non-major governmental funds, the proprietary funds, which are your water and sewer funds, and fiduciary funds, which are funds held by the various elected officials in some kind of fiduciary or escrow capacity. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly, in all material respects, the respective financial position of the aforementioned governmental units as of June 30th, 2020, and the respective changes in financial position in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the U.S. There are references to other reports, required supplemental information that's required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. We do not render an opinion on those. We discuss with management the way that they accumulated that information and ensure that underlying financial information was congruent with the financial statements, but we do not render an opinion on them. Other information, there are a number of combining schedules and detailed information schedules that we review to ensure that they are congruent, or as the terminology says, in relation to the financial statements as a whole. And we are fairly presented, those statements are fairly presented in relation to the financial statements. It also makes reference to other reporting required by governmental auditing standards, and those are in a separate report. They are opinions. One is an opinion on the county's management of their federal funds, and we gave a clean opinion, as in we are of the opinion that the county complied with the requirements for management of federal money for the fiscal year. The other report, we assess the county's internal controls and compliance with laws and regulations as a part of designing our audit of the financial statements as a whole, but in expressing an opinion on internal controls is not a part of the audit. If we find material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, we will call them to your attention. We found no such issues in 2020. And as a final thank you, I would like to thank the finance staff for the yeoman work that they did during very difficult circumstances in conducting the audit, because it was all done remotely, and also in the absence of your former finance director. So again, I'd like to express my thanks for that. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to entertain them.
Any questions on Ms. Allen? Thank you, Ms. Allen. Mr. Mixon?
Excuse me, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, you may want to just for the public content that we did have a 45-minute meeting prior to this meeting with the auditor about this. Not that this is all new to us.
I almost will comment on that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you're getting a lot of help tonight.
Yeah, I am. That's all good.
I would like to, Mr. Chair, if I may, like to thank Webster Rogers for their great work. They've been working with us now for a number of years, and we certainly have enjoyed that relationship. They're very professional, very thorough, and while we're not perfect, I don't know that anybody is, the issues we need to work on are minor, and we will do that. I'd like to also take this opportunity, Mr. Chair, if I could, to introduce our new finance director for Suffolk County, Vet. If you'd like to stand up, Vet Rogers just started with us last Tuesday, so she's very new. We just have to have our new IT director right here in the back corner. I think I introduced him at another meeting, but Vet, welcome, and thank you. She's hit the ground running, as you can imagine, us wrapping up a audit process. I'd also like to recognize Kelsey Andrews. Kelsey has carried the water for us for the last year in the absence of Jamie Michelson, and particularly through this audit process. Charlotte mentioned Kelsey and the team. They worked very hard to make sure this process was complete, and a lot of work done by Kelsey. So Kelsey, thank you. That's a great team. I look forward to them doing some wonderful things for Suffolk County in our finance operations. Thank you.
You did it to me too. I want to take the time to thank Kelsey and Vet, Vet for the hard work that you did with Mr. Mixon. I want you to also convey the thanks of council to all of your department heads for the hard work that they did in preparing the budget last year, which made it easy for us to balance things.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. And I forgot speaking to the mic. Okay. So thank you very much, Mr. Mixon. Job well done. Okay, next item on the agenda is Resolution 21-02. Mr. Bryan.
Mr. Chair, members of the council, you may recall that George McGregor left and went to Parks North, and he's been succeeded by Helen Rubin. So as it stands right now, the only person on the planning staff who provides ordinance summons for a land use violation in the county is Helen Rubin. So she's asked if we add Jeff to work as a person who would be able to provide an ordinance summons for a land use violation in the unincorporated areas of Suffolk County. That's what this is about.
Okay, any questions on Mr. Bryant?
This is not creating a new position, it's just.
No, he's already on the staff. This just gives him the authority to write the ordinance summons so that Ms. Rubin doesn't have to leave her office to go out there to do that.
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
It's been approved by Mr. Edens and seconded by Ms. McGaney that we approve ordinance 21-02. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, resolution 2102 is approved. Third reading for ordinance 21942, Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chair, members of the council, this is the ordinance that approves the fee and tax agreement with Thompson Construction. We had a public hearing and second reading. There have been no changes since second reading. They've taken
Move for approval.
Second. Been moved by Mr. Baker and seconded by Mr. Edens that we approve third reading for ordinance 21942. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Ordinance 21942 is approved. Ordinance 21943, Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chair, members of the council, 21943 is an ordinance to amend the master agreement that we have with Sumter Lee for the multi-county park and to add the spec building now owned by Thompson Construction into that multi-county park.
Move for approval. Been moved by Mr. Baton and approved by Ms. McGaney and seconded by Ms. McGaney that we have third reading for 21943. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, 21943 is approved. Ordinance 21944, Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, 21944 establishes the Sumter City County Litter Advisory Board. No changes since second reading.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been approved. A motion's been made for approval by Mr. Edens, seconded by Mr. Baker. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our last meeting, I indicated that the Sheriff's Department Advisory Board would also like to be a participant with this group, and thank you, Mr. London.
I mentioned during our last meeting that the Sumter County Sheriff's Advisory Board would like to be a participant with this group, and if it's at the proper time, I'd like to move that we include them as a part of the group. Right, exactly. It's an amendment.
Mr. Chair, if we could, I think we might want to have an opportunity to speak with the sheriff and some of his participants. And Mr. Washington may have already done that, but there may be some details we need to work out and put in the ordinance that might apply to that. So if we could do that at a different time, that would probably be more appropriate. Just a suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, by way of information, I have visited with the advisory board and personnel at the Sheriff's Department, but if the protocol is to have that conversation formally with staff, that's absolutely fine with me.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just go ahead and make a point on that. I mean, the sheriff is included in this board now, he or his designee. I would much rather see the Sheriff's Advisory Board meet as they do, carry whatever recommendations they have to whoever it is going to be representing the Sheriff's Department on this board, rather than adding a number of more people to this board.
Mr. Chairman, if I could be recognized again.
Yes, sir.
I think the sheriff is engaged. Sumter has a very serious litter problem. I think we need all hands on deck, particularly in rural areas, particularly in my area. I know that Mr. Baker has the same issue in his area. I also know Councilman down on the end, Councilman Baton, has the same issue. So to me, it would make sense that we have all hands on deck. And I think the advisory role can play a very critical role in helping to address this issue.
And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be involved. I'm saying they should be involved as the sheriff's advisory group. And then relay anything they would like to the little group at that point. And the little group can use them in any means they would like, as far as education or picking up trash or whatever.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you, Mr. Eads. I just do not see the problem with including them as a part of this group. We're all focused
How many members
on the
are on
same
this?
goal.
How many
Well,
members?
they would designate a member to participate.
One, they pick one out of the group.
Correct. I mean, I just don't think we turn away people who want to
I
help.
agree.
And if I may, I mean, we're gonna have to tack this through a number of ways. And there are some conversations going on now with Sheriff's Department and the solicitor to recreate teams that will also, as a pilot project, be a part of the effort to begin addressing this issue, which has escalated since Corona. In fact, there's an article in the paper today. There's an article in the paper in the state newspaper, and there are a number of groups that are talking about this issue. As you know, Councilman from Denzel and I share Shaw Air Force Base. I've gotten correspondence about it. He's gotten correspondence about it. It's one of those basic needs that we must address, and we can't push it to the side. We have to address it directly. It affects economic development. It affects people coming into the county, and we need all hands on deck.
Mr. Washington, all of us are in agreement that it's a bad problem in something, and that's why we are trying to formulate this committee to work in conjunction with what the city is doing. And you're right, we need all hands on deck. All I think that Mr. Edens is talking about is once we establish this committee, we don't want it to be too big, the committee itself too big where it's got too many members. So that's all he's addressing. Sure, the Sheriff's Advisory Committee is welcome. We need them all hands on deck, all of us as well. So I think that's the only point, as long as that committee just doesn't get too big to handle.
One moment, Mr. Chairman.
That's not going to be a problem.
He clarified that that the committee, that advisory board will recommend one member.
That's what he just said.
How many does the sheriff get to appoint to that committee? Two? One?
And maybe this is his appointment. This could be his appointment, his advisory board member. That may be the solution right there. Let that be his appointment.
The city police have one.
They got one.
Do they have an advisory group? The city police?
Yes, they do. We have met with their group. I am a part of the Sheriff's Advisory Group, and we have met jointly with the city. In fact, we toured both facilities, work well together. So I am familiar with some of their members as well.
And I would just like to add that, another arm of that, and I know it's gonna be established, however they're going to operate. But, we can't forget about, the efforts that Palmetto Pride puts forth with, establishing groups of people that go out and pick up trash and, just having pride. It's really heartbreaking that we don't love our community any more than we do, that we trash it up so badly. And really it's against the law to litter, and people need to know that. And I just wish that there were more, tickets given and accountability for littering.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there is a conversation going on now that would allow people incarcerated the opportunity to address their service commitment through engaging in litter collection. Now, let me just say very quickly, there's some legal ramifications around that, and I'm doing the research on how that's been addressed in other areas, and I am here to tell you that it can be addressed very easily. And so at the appropriate time, we'll have that conversation as well.
Again, this ordinance is to establish this litter advisory board. Once it is established, we'll start getting into the weeds as to who all is going to be appointed, what direction it's going to take. All of that's being done. This ordinance, and we recognize what are you saying, Mr. Washington, but this ordinance is just establishing the litter advisory board at this point. Once we get it established and start meeting, all of those considerations that you brought up and everybody else brought up will be taken into consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may add, now in this ordinance, it does identify what positions are proposed, so that is, okay. One of the things that hasn't been, and I think this lends to what the conversation you're having, is that the workings of that group and how it functions is yet to be determined, but what's proposed are subcommittees below, if you want to call that, working individually, and that's where the masses get involved. So there will be a subcommittee, for example, that deals with the law enforcement side of it, that deals with the court side of it. All that'll be, as I envision, we got to talk through it, work through it, but there's already been a lot of conversation. There'll be another one that addresses public involvement as far as litter pickup. So that'll be another subcommittee to the advisory board. And all those things will again, it's all about, like I said, bringing everybody to the table, all hands on deck. But it's got to be done in a fashion that can be coordinated through a smaller group, because if you have a large group, and it's been proven numerous times, 20 or so members, it's hard to get any kind of movement or consensus or direction. So I think that was the intent of identifying these, and a lot of thought went into which ones these would be. But to address specifically advisory board, it may be the sheriff's going to get an appointment. He may pick somebody from there that he knows is passionate about this and interested in it, and also has that armed with the advisory board for the sheriff. So it brings in even more people, I guess what I'm saying. So there's a little bit of work to be done, but I'm just giving you a little bit of background of how this was put together. And there's opportunities for other people to be involved, certainly. It's got to.
Mr. Chairman, as a final comment, I would also remind this body that the litter issue is much worse in the rural area than it is downtown Sumter. And the Sheriff Advisory Council pretty much manages the entire county, which includes the rural area. Part of that reason is because we have trash disposal. People have to carry their trash to the trash dump. So you have a lot of trash flying all around, all over the place, and this is just not a good thing. So I just want to make sure that the rural area is heavily represented in addressing this issue.
Well, I will say this, that
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I envision that that's exactly what's going to happen, because the city already has their own advisory committee. So I envision this to be a county advisory committee. It's joint, but with a lot of emphasis, most of the emphasis from our perspective will be on the county, because all of these roads leading into and out of the county in everybody's direction. I was going out on Camden Highway, and I mean, it's terrible.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to this coming to fruition. It's about time we started doing something about it. So thank you, Mr. Washington, for your passion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I have a motion to approve. Okay, well, okay, I'm sorry. We've already moved and seconded. All in favor, hearing.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
When I call for discussion, that's when Mr. Washington, so we never had third reading.
Mr. Chairman, I think we got stalled when I put up the motion to include the Sheriff's Advisory Committee, a member from the Advisory Committee on the liquor council, and I think that's where we got hung up. So I think that motion is still on the floor.
It died because of the
So back to the original motion.
So the motion died for lack of a second.
Right.
Did it require a second?
Yeah, all motions require a second.
And there was no second to include the sheriff's department?
We had the discussion about that. They will, the sheriff has a position, and it's gonna be up to him who he puts on it, and hopefully that'll be one of the positions that he includes.
Mr. Chairman, can you explain what is the motion? Please share the motion.
Well, the first motion was to approve third reading to establish the, committee, and then Mr. Washington made a secondary motion to include the, Sheriff's Advisory Board on the committee. And then we had a discussion about that.
Okay, so we just approved, adding on that additional position, right?
No, we did not.
Did we disapprove establishing the litter advisory board?
We never got to call, I mean, we had a second and a motion.
That's what I'm saying, we haven't got to that point yet.
You're right.
But didn't we have a motion in a second for the first?
Yes, sir, when I called for the question, there was discussion, which Mr. Washington brought up another motion.
I got
Okay, so that motion was not approved.
Right.
I thought the one establishing the litter,
We're back to the.
we're back to that, okay.
With the clarification that, you know, in the discussion, Mr. Washington's concern was to be sure that the Sheriff's Advisory Board is included, and he specified one member. And I think it is the consensus of everybody that the understanding is already there within that original motion. And so that's why it didn't get second.
It's not in the original motion,
It's in the ordinance.
it's in the ordinance.
Right. The ordinance satisfies everything, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so we have a
We have a
clear
motion
motion.
and a second to approve ordinance, third reading for ordinance 21-944, creating the City County Litter Advisory Board. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, ordinance establishing the Litter Alliance is approved. Come now to committee reports. The Fiscal Tax and Property Committee did meet prior to County Council meeting at 5:15, where we received the results of the audit presented by Webster Rogers, which was also presented earlier in the meeting by Ms. Allen. All members were present. Come now to reports from council members on other meetings, trainings, and/or conferences.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add some comments once, the, administrator gives a report on the, Covert.
It's included in our report.
I've been keeping a record of the number of veterans that died here in Sumter, and I'm beginning to feel emotional about it because I'm beginning to see some of the veterans that are dying of people that I know, people that I've worked with, people that I've eaten breakfast with for years. These people are dying. And I noticed at the last meeting, Councilman Baker said that based on his survey that he made, it appears that Sumter is one of the safest counties to live in at this point in time. Well, I beg the difference because it might be safe in other areas, but when it comes to military veterans, it seems like it's a death trap for of military veterans, something. In the 58 days that or 78 days that I've been keeping a record of the number of deaths from December the 8th to February 23rd today, there have been 58 veterans that have died. And like I said, it's beginning to bother me because now I'm seeing people that I personally know that I've worked with, even one that I've worked with in the military. Today, we have 144 confirmed COVID deaths. Last meeting, February the 9th, we had 135. But we also had 47 veterans on February the 9th. On February the 23rd, now we have 58. So 11 veterans have died in the last 2 weeks. And the source, again, of my information is the Sumter item obituary page. I review that every day I get a paper. I'm a subscriber of the paper. I review that and look and read the obituary of people who have passed away to see if military service is indicated in there. Now, the sad part about this is I just started doing this since December 8th to this day, which is 78 days. But in those 78 days, 58 veterans have died. I hate to think what the count would have been if I started 1 January of 2020. I guarantee you that of these 144 people that we're reporting the deaths today, I guarantee you that 75 to 100 of them are military veterans. Again, we are not recognizing the fact that Shaw Air Force Base and 3rd Army or U.S. Army Central is here. And it has been established that Sumter population is one of the highest populations for military veterans. So we have a large population of military veterans in Sumter, and they are dying. They are dying, and we are not doing anything about it. I would hate to think again that we are going to sit back and say a mass ordinance is not necessary when the hospital CEO, New Toomey Infant Hospital CEO, Louis Smith, says that something is seeing a surge in hospitalizations because of COVID-19 complications. This was less than a month ago, January the 26th. He talked about this big surge in hospitalization and how it's having a great impact on his staff. He is saying, relative to the volume of increases, certainly has stretched our staff, Smith said, of the continued burden on hospital staff who are contending with surges in patients as well as their own exposure to the virus. This is our hospital saying how serious the problem is in Sumter. And of course, we have our sister governing body here in Sumter, which is the city of Sumter, and their council have said that they're going to have a mask mandate. And they extended it because they said, once again, Sumter County Council, Sumter City Council, extended an emergency ordinance on Tuesday, and this was January 19th,
covering the warrant of food service establishments. The council voted 5-1, with Councilman Colin Davis voting against it. I'm sorry, but they said that they extended it, rather, because there's a surge in the number of COVID-19 cases in Sumter. So if our city government is saying that there's a surge, if our hospital is saying that there's a surge, if both of them are saying that there's a problem in Sumter, how are we saying that there's no problem? That it's the safest place to live in the county? I just can't understand it. And like I said, it really impacts me because people who are dying that I'm looking at in the obituary are people that I've worked with in the military and people that I've sit down and had breakfast with on many times and discussed the military. So again, I'm going to ask again that this body implement a mask mandate for the county of Sumter. I'm going to leave it in your hands and let you know that veterans are dying in this county at an alarming rate. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question for Mr. Brady. When you say that you get the item and you read, I think you said since our last meeting, 11 veterans have died.
Since the last meeting, yes,
Did the item say they died from COVID?
the item covered that.
That's my question. Did the item say they died from COVID or they just died?
They don't say
Okay, that's all.
whether they died from COVID.
But you're
Okay.
implying that they died from
No,
COVID.
no,
Yes,
I'm
sir,
just
you are.
implying at the number of veterans that are dying. And I guarantee you that the number of veterans, they're over the age of 70. And I guarantee you, a lot of them have served in Vietnam. And I guarantee you that they was exposed to herbicide in Vietnam.
Monthly reports, Ms. Bland.
Yes, sir. If council will look at, there's a report in your packet, and it says, bridge work. Please review it. It'll let you know what's going on in, the county area, so that if some of your constituents are a little concerned, you'll see it's, North St. Paul's Church Road, Eastern School Road, Hauser Street, and Kingsbury, as well as Mush Swamp. I'll leave the rest up there. But anyway, those are just, little bridges that will be taken care of. And a few of the council members have already signed up for South Carolina Rules Summit. It is a virtual meeting. The chairman informed me, and if you would like to be a part of that, please go. If you still have time to join, or at least register for it. And SCDOT says that I think every 10 years or so many years they do a complete survey of for elected officials to give them a fill out for the elected officials to fill out a survey on the work that SCDOT is doing. So if you have any concerns, now is the time to fill out the paperwork. Okay? Thank you.
Landing, I already been online and responded to the survey myself. I don't know if anybody else has. I'll do it.
You know, it's on the 24th. I was waiting. It says tomorrow.
Yeah, but it's available online now.
Yes, it's from the 24th of February to the April 26th. And just a side note, I didn't put it in here, but March 30th is the last day for filing ethics report.
When?
March 30th.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Mr. Mixon, County Administrator's report.
Mr. Chair, two quick items. First, I just wanted to let council know that the county budget process is officially open now. We have all our departments and agencies that have access to a finance portal that they are loading their information over the next couple of weeks. Our first workshop plan for council will be the first meeting in April. So we've got a good bit of work to do between now and then for us, the staff and departments. But we're eager to get involved in this process, and we will bring that information to council so that the dialogue can begin. The second item, just for information purposes, as you know, we have not been open for public comment to the general public, and we are following the DHEC numbers of cases in our community. It looks as though right now it's trending down, and if so, hopefully by our next meeting, we will be able to open back up for public comment in the council chambers. So we will.
Thank you. Once again.
So, it'd be a good time for me to just be quiet. So that's the end of my report, sir.
Thank you. Yes, we will be. If all things being equal and the trends remain the same, we will be opening up public comment to the public on our first meeting in March.
Mr. Chairman,
If I may, thank you, Mr. Mixon, for that update on the budget future. A couple weeks ago, I mentioned to this council that I thought it was necessary to begin having a workshop to talk about some of the issues that will be facing us, and there will be many, and there will be some strong conversation about basic needs. My understanding is that the chairman, and Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for sending out a notice about holding a workshop, and my understanding that his response was thin. There was not a strong response. I am hoping that we will not wait until April to begin having some of those intensive conversations. I want to remind this council that I think it's a good idea to start having those conversations now and identify those big ticket items that we're gonna have to address. And I've said this before, basic services are lacking in Sumter County, particularly in the rural areas. And so I want to encourage my colleagues to rethink that because it does not serve us well to wait until we are in the throes of a budget to have those kinds of conversations. We ought to be on the same page or close to the same page prior to entering those budget discussions. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your effort in that regard, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.